Oh, man, that was a great vacation. Nothing like a full week's worth of vacation time to clear one's head. It's good to be back, though. Hope you didn't miss me too much. And while I'd enjoy reminiscing about my trip and whatnot, I'd much rather talk about what's happening now. Sort of. Today's news story of interest entails a country in Asia who's referred to by two different names, and a troubling incident they had with China, because China just seems to somehow always end up involved in something that relates to a neighboring country. The country not named China, you might know it as Burma, or Myanmar, which is the shortened version of the official name, which is the Republic of the Union of Myanmar. I'm not really going to get into this topic of what name to use. Either name is fine for me, but since this type of thing can be an issue, I'm going to go with the long but official name. Once again, that's the Republic of the Union of Myanmar, and shorten it to the RUM. Just remember, when I say RUM, I'm talking about Burma or Myanmar, whatever you call it by. Anyways, so what's going on with the RUM and China, you might ask? Well, before we discuss what happened recently, it's probably important if I mention what kind of relationship the two have held with one another in the past. Back in 1950, the RUM was actually the first non-communist country to recognize the communist-led People's Republic of China. So they were actually pretty good friends during the early part of the Cold War era. But it wasn't smooth sailing, of course. In 1967, anti-Chinese riots broke out, where Chinese communities in the RUM were expelled, and relations got hostile between the two nations. Things started cooling down, though, in the 1970s, but China did reduce its support of the Communist Party of Burma, which right now is the oldest existing political party in the RUM. In 1988, there was then violent repression of pro-democracy protests in the RUM, and the international community started condemning them. So the RUM essentially worked to reconcile and rebuild stronger relations with China. And for about 20 years, things were rather alright. Then in 2009, the military junta forces of the RUM began engaging in skirmishes with ethnic minorities in the north near the border of China. It's referred to as the Kokang incident of 2009, Kokang being the region of the RUM where this conflict broke out. Ethnic minorities in the RUM do include Chinese, and several thousands of refugees have poured into China through the border. So naturally this is straining relations between China and the RUM. This was mostly viewed as an internal issue, though, and China hasn't sought to get involved. And the clashes between the military and ethnic groups have been raging on and off for some time now. Which brings us to what happened recently, as things got a little more dicey when fighting between minority groups and government forces ramped up, and an estimated 50,000 refugees poured into China's southwest last month. In an apparent misunderstanding, the RUM saw one of its military planes bomb Chinese nationals on China's side of the border, and that killed 4 Chinese citizens and it wounded another 9. This comes after a stray shell from the RUM flattened a house in China's territory a few days ago. So obviously this is sure to strain the relations between the two countries further, and it remains to be seen how China will act in response to this. Right now they're actually calling the ambassador of the RUM over to obviously chastise and ask for an apology. But what's my stance on this? I would say tread lightly, Myanmar, or Burma, whatever you call yourselves. Last thing you want to do is give China an easy excuse to annex you under the pretext of helping ethnic minorities. The international community has already seen that script before from another would-be superpower, and it hasn't exactly gone well for the smaller country. Now then, time to talk about scoundrels and saints, because I'm going to honor some heroes. The news has lately been keen to talk about how somewhat substantial numbers of people in Western countries have traveled to Syria or Iraq to join the ranks of the Scourge of the Earth, better known as the Islamic State. Heck, Boko Haram has officially joined the IS, which I specifically warned it might occur back in the 8th installment of the show. Just saying, I told you so. I even made a case that if it occurred, the nations of the world should consider taking a more active role in dealing with this threat. Airstrikes can only do so much, after all. Well, as it turns out, several brave men and women got tired of waiting for the nations of the world, or the free world, as they call themselves, to step up their efforts, and instead decided to join and assist the Kurds, a group that seems most committed to fighting the Islamic State, because their very existence is threatened by them. And these are people from places like the United Kingdom, Australia, Germany, and other nations, who could have chosen to ignore what was happening in that region of the world, but they didn't. They didn't have to go over there and risk their lives against the Islamic State, but they did. Probably because they understood, as the quote goes, that the only thing necessary for evil to succeed is for good people to do nothing. Make no mistake about it, the Islamic State is evil. Mass killings, the destruction of ancient artifacts and relics, they need to be stopped. These people understood that, and I'm sure they didn't go over there for the sake of fame and recognition. But I find it appalling that the governments of the nations these people are from seem to feel content to ignore or recognize that they are fighting the good fight over there. Which is why I'm going to say it. Thank you, Ashley Johnston. He was an Australian soldier who died last month in Syria fighting alongside the Kurds against Islamic State. Thank you, Constantinos Eric Scurfield, the former British Royal Marine who died fighting in Syria against the Islamic State along with the Kurds on March 2nd, 2014. Thank you, Ivana Hoffman, the young woman from Germany who died last weekend fighting Islamic State in Syria alongside the Kurds, whose death German officials declined to comment on. And thank you to all the other individuals who felt they had the skills to contribute in the fight against the Islamic State and took it upon themselves to take action when their government wouldn't. Whether they are foreign recruits who want to assist the Kurds in their battle against Islamic State, or the Kurdish forces themselves who have bravely held their ground against the wretched Islamic State, Mr. Johnston, Mr. Scurfield, Miss Hoffman, and all the others still living and fighting the good fight. You are truly heroes, and I commend you for what you have sacrificed and or are still sacrificing as we speak. Now on to some suggested reading. Here's a recommendation. If you're an American parent and your child is attending school, then you might be aware of the United States' poor standing in education when compared to other first world nations. You might also remember how several installments ago I mentioned the USA has a troubling illiteracy rate. The book I'm recommending today isn't really intended to tackle either of those previously mentioned issues. The book is called Effin' Exams, The Very Best Totally Wrong Test Answers by Richard Benson. The book is a light-hearted way of chuckling at real test answers by real students that didn't know the answer to the question, so they just totally improvised in a creative and hilarious way, covering many school subjects ranging from science, social studies, English, and math, with such gems as the question, what does terminal illness mean? The answer given? It's when you get sick at the airport. Or a personal favorite of mine, what is having only one spouse called? The answer the student wrote, monotony. I think that's as good a closer as there can be. Feel free to check out links in the description if you'd like to find out more about any topics mentioned in this installment, and hope everyone has a jovial St. Patrick's Day this Wednesday. I know I will. See you next week.